In this video, I'm going to give you a brief introduction into trigonometry. We're going to look at SOHCAHTOA, what that is, and just a recap of probably things that you did in year 9. Now, trigonometry is all to do with working out missing information on triangles. It's all to do with working out missing sides or missing angles inside triangles. We're going to look at SOHCAHTOA, and the most important thing to remember on the SOHCAHTOA is that the thing I'm going to show you in a moment only works for right angled triangles. So it does not work on scalenes and so on, unless you can chop it into right angled triangles. For example, if you had some scalene like this, then you can split it like this into 2 right angled triangles and then use SOHCAHTOA on each one. But just remember, it only works on right angled triangles. I'm going to talk to you about what these letters represent and what these triangles represent now. So first of all, SOH. Now let's go through each one by one. So S stands for sine, or we abbreviate to SIN or sin, but it's pronounced sine, and it actually stands for the word sine. O stands for the letter O stands for opposite, and the H stands for hypotenuse, and we'll get to that in a second. Now let me explain what this triangle represents here. In a question, you're going to get given some sort of angle like this, and the triangle represents a simple kind of formula really, but it stands for the following: OH and sine. It stands for sine of the angle is equal to, so this bottom corner here, which means sine of an angle, is equal to the opposite side divided by the hypotenuse, and I'm going to abbreviate it to OPP for opposite and HYP for hypotenuse. So that's what this first triangle represents, and that's what these letters represent here. That sign is a button on your calculator that you're going to press. Okay, so the next one, the C stands for cos or cosine. That's the actual full name for it. And the O stands for, the A stands for adjacent, and we'll get to that in a second as to what that means. And the H stands for hypotenuse again, so I'm just going to put HYP. So this triangle represents the following formula: cos of some angle is equal to the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. Okay, and the last one the T stands for tangent or tan, which stands for the word tangent, so that's a tan button on your calculator. The O stands for opposite, and the A stands for adjacent. So these, and then the formula, it stands for the tan of some angle that you have to work out, you're told. So tan of the angle is equal to the opposite divided by the adjacent. So the opposite divided by the adjacent. That's what these three kind of groups of letters mean. And that's what it means. And this kind of like represents the triangle. It's very similar to like distance speed triangle. Remember like distance speed triangles? So distance, how does it go? So distance speed time works like this, and speed times time is distance. Distance divided by time is speed. So you can write D is S times that and so on, or S is equal to distance over time. That's kind of like what these triangles represent here, but they really kind of are representation of these little formulas here. Now, the most important thing on this kind of basic SOHCAHTOA stuff is labeling a triangle correctly. So the most important thing is that you have to label it correctly. So let's take this right angle triangle here. Let's say, for example, we are asked to do something with this triangle, and this is the angle we're working with, this angle in the bottom left hand corner. Now we might be told this angle, so it might be given to us, or we might have to work it out, but this is the angle we're working with. Now we have to label this triangle correctly before we decide which one of these triangles, so which one of these SOHCAHTOA we're going to use. So the most important thing is labeling it correctly. So this is the right angle. So first of all, the side that's directly on the other side of the right angle is always the hypotenuse, which I'm going to abbreviate it to HYP. That stands for hypotenuse. And it's always the longest side of the right angle triangle, but this is the right angle, this side is the hypotenuse. Now the other two sides, you have to label it based on the angle that you're working with. So this is the angle I'm working with. So this side here, the one that is directly opposite the angle, is called the opposite. So OPP, that stands for opposite. And it literally is the opposite side to the angle we're working with. So this is the angle we're working with, that's its opposite side. And the last side is the adjacent side, or ADJ for adjacent. And adjacent just means next to. So that's the adjacent side. And so you've got to label it correctly. If we go to this triangle here, let's say for example we're working with this angle here in this corner. This is the angle B. Okay, so if we label this triangle, here's the right angle, so this is the hypotenuse. Then based on this angle, this is its opposite side, so this would be the opposite, and this last side would be the adjacent. So you've got to label it correctly based on the angle you're given. That's the most important thing. If you label it correctly, everything else is so easy. So for example, if we go back to this first triangle, if we're working with this angle, let's call that B again. So if this is the angle we're working with, here's the right angle, so this again would be the hypotenuse, that would stay the same. But for this angle, if that's the one we're working with, this would be its opposite side, and then this would be the adjacent, because that's the last side. So I always label it in that order. Hypotenuse first, then the opposite, and then the last one's the adjacent. Now by the way, these three triangles, you need to know them off by heart. So you need to learn them. So sometimes when I write Sokotoa, I tend to write it this way, so it helps me remember it. I tend to write S-O-O-H, which stands for this, kind of like this triangle here. Look, S-O-H. I write it in a triangle like this. So when I write Sokotoa, I write S-O-H like a triangle like this, and then C-A-H in a triangle like this. So C-A-H, I'm using the worst pen here, but C-A-H represents the middle triangle, and then I write T-O-A like this, so I can remember the triangle. So you've got to remember these triangles off by heart and how they work. So get used to writing Sokotoa like this. So S-O-H, C-A-H, and then T-O-A like that. And then it's easy to remember. Okay, in the next video we'll look at how to actually use these to work out missing sides and missing angles. Thank you for watching.